Tracker tyranny and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the millennial joining me today is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer on the other side of the camera. Welcome, everyone, after a long Memorial Day holiday. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know here on the East Coast, the weather was beautiful for a change. I mean, we've had a really cold spring. Finally, we've had beautiful weather. And finally, it happened during a weekend, a holiday weekend. But welcome back. This podcast is called Tracker Tyranny, and we do have a dumbest bill in America. So as you know, podcast listeners, in Davos, Switzerland, every year, the world's elites, defined as liberals and fake conservatives, the world's elites show up in Davos, Switzerland, and they talk about how they're going to take over and control the world. That's basically what it is. I mean, let's face it. And so you might say to yourself, no, that's not what it is. It's just a bunch of really important people meeting in Switzerland to talk about strategic things about mankind, how to make mankind better, and how to improve the world and make Earth a better place. Nonsense. Davos, Switzerland is about elites getting together and deciding how you're going to live versus how they actually live and intend to continue to live. In other words, they want to organize society in a way that fits their lifestyle. But of course, your lifestyle is going to be grossly interrupted. Would you like to know how? Just one of the reasons? Well, this podcast is called Tracker Tyranny. And here is an example of tracker tyranny. In Headline USA, multiple other papers, by the way, across the board, and we even have the clip to prove it. So you just can listen in this guy's own words. Tech for Tyrants unveiled at Davos World Economic Forum. So the president of the Chinese tech firm Alibaba, which, by the way, is not a Chinese national and certainly not a mainland Chinese communist, it's actually somebody from the West that's ahead of Alibaba, the Chinese tech company, told the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the globalist gift that keeps on giving, that his company is developing an individual carbon footprint tracker that will enable consumers to monitor their own carbon usage along with tracking everyday movements and habits. And we have a clip on this, but first of all, I want you to know who this is. So we have this guy. His name is, let me see. It is Michael Evans. He's the president of Alibaba Group. So J. Michael Evans, he boasts at the World Economic Forum about the development of an individual carbon footprint tracker to monitor what you buy, what you eat, and where and how you travel. Okay? So this is obviously a guy from the West who the Chinese put in place to put in charge of a Chinese company so that naturally he can extend this tech to the rest of the world. But he's boasting about this at Davos, Switzerland. He's literally saying that this is the best thing since sliced bread, and we should implement this post haste because the elites have a right to know this. But of course, what he's really saying is we would only do this so that you can monitor your carbon footprint, not so that we can monitor it. Sure, we have that clip. Here it is.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Oh, yes. We're working on it. Stay tuned. We at Alibaba, the Chinese, communist firm that this guy from the West is ahead of, we're going to put forth and implement a carbon tracker. Not so that we can track you. Of course not. No, so that you can track yourself. So at this year's Davos Shindig, in Davos, Switzerland, Evans, the guy you just heard, also was providing a sneak peek at Alibaba's planned green travel maps system. It's called a green travel maps system, which would provide bonus points to consumers that take the most efficient routes and the most efficient form of transportation in order to reach their destination. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman, Evans, ahead of Alibaba, was also giving a sneak peek at their planned green travel maps system, which would provide bonus points, so it's a point system, to the everyday consumer that take the most efficient route and the most efficient form of transportation when they go from point A to point B. Why would there need to be a point system? Because naturally, this is the same thing as a social credit score. It's the same thing as taxing you. Okay, so they're going to say, well, you got bonus points last month, but not enough with the way you traveled. So therefore, we're going to tax you. We're going to tax your carbon footprint. And if we tax your carbon footprint, which is like this ridiculous thing to tax, obviously. And this is, by the way, this is why the Second Amendment exists, ladies and gentlemen, is to overthrow governments that think that they can tax you and measure your footprint as to when, where, and how you travel so that they can ultimately restrict your travel, which is obviously the purpose of this. The elites aren't going to restrict their travel, but they're going to make sure that your travel is severely restricted through a point system, a bonus point system, according to this green travel map bonus point system that Evans has pointed out. And in addition to that, it's a social credit score. So you get a social credit score based on if you, let's say, criticize the government. Well, that would make your social credit score go down. You would have a very bad social credit score because you're criticizing the government. You would have a bad social credit score because you decided to take a plane instead of getting inside of a bus with, 150 other people and going cross country. So therefore your social credit score as a result of taking the plane goes down. You are going to get a lower social credit score because you bought an SUV, or you bought a boat, or you bought a jet ski, or you use a lawnmower, or you just name it, ladies and gentlemen. What is it that they can't control in your life once this social credit score system is put into place, once the carbon tracker is put into place, and once this bonus point system for how you travel is put into place? Because it's all interrelated. Of course it's interrelated. This is what these elites are discussing at Davos, Switzerland. They're discussing, how do we control the individual? They're not, of course, talking about the uniquely American system of government, which is the individual is paramount and the individual is ultimately what matters, and so does individual freedom. No, they're saying, how do we eliminate individual freedom and have the elites and government completely and utterly control everything that the individual does? That is exactly what the conversation was in Davos, Switzerland. So here's the thing. I want you to listen to this idiot again. We're going to play the same clip again. This is of J. Michael Evans, head of the World Economic Forum, who's boasting about the development of an individual carbon footprint tracker to monitor what you buy, what you eat. They even want to control what you eat and where and how you travel. We have that clip again. Listen carefully.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's, where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Did you hear the people in the background in Davos, Switzerland? They're like, oh, this is so great. We're going to be able to control all the deplorables. This is really this is what the leadership in the world elites, okay, across the planet, the so-called global elites and the globalists, as well as the folks that just want things to stay the way they are, and moved by stay the way they are. I mean, they're never really running for office to try to give freedom back to the individual. They want to continuously try to take away your constitutional rights. And this is what these people think of you. So here are some quotes from J.D. Vance as an example. J.D. Vance just won the Republican primary in Ohio for governor. And J.D. Vance is very much of an individualist and very much believes in the United States Constitution and is very much not part of the Republican establishment at all. He is going to shake up the establishment. He said, quote, imagine flying a private jet to a conference of the world's most powerful people and then lecturing other people on their carbon footprint. This is very popular. People who travel in private jets, wrote radio host Andrew Wilkow. Quote, they aren't even hiding what they're planning, marveled the Young Americans for Liberty account. That's the truth, right? These global elites aren't even trying to hide what they want to do to you and how they want to control your ability to travel and what you can put inside of your body. Blake Masters, who's running for United States Senate in Arizona, tweeted out, the WHO, WEF, and the UN do not cede an inch of sovereignty to these or any other globalist organizations. So there you have two people, Blake Masters and J.D. Vance in particular, both of whom are running for United States Senate as Republicans, who are anti-establishment and very much pro-Constitution and pro-individual liberty. And did you hear any other Republicans, by the way, or any other Democrats or any other individual in politics today at the national level, for example? Did you hear anyone talk about this Davos, Switzerland meeting and some of the things that are coming out of there and what they've discussed? Did you hear anyone, any Republicans say, you know what? I'm actually going to put a bill in to prohibit the measuring of any individual carbon footprint or carbon footprint tracker? Have you heard a Republican say that? Or how about, I'm going to put a bill in to prohibit a social credit score from being given, or anything that even resembles remotely a social credit score? I haven't heard a single Republican say that. I'm not saying that, potentially there might be someone out there who has said it and it hasn't been reported. I haven't seen it. And yet we're getting all this information from Davos, Switzerland, and the Republicans are silent. I don't see any legislation to protect the American people. And of course, I know what you're probably going to think. Well, the Constitution protects us. You're right. The Constitution does protect us. But we have a global elite in the United States of America who are currently in charge, who want to cede American sovereignty to the global system, the globalists. And that's why they go to Davos, Switzerland. By the way, even our governor in Maryland, Larry Hogan, who is without question, part of the elite, even he went to Davos, Switzerland. Okay, because he wants to be part of the club. And and look, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly who Larry Hogan is. He's the perfect example, okay, of the guy that wants to go to Davos, Switzerland because he wants to be in the in crowd. I want to be in the in crowd, It's like just like high school. I want to be part of that cool club over there, the really cool club. I want to be part of them because then I'm just like really important and everybody's going to like me. And that's Larry Hogan. He wants to be part of that cool club, except that this cool club in Davos, Switzerland is entirely about controlling your life. Because that's what these people believe. They believe government should be so powerful as to wipe out any semblance of individuality and any semblance of your ability to be able to travel. I got to tell you something, folks. Across the planet, the United States of America is unique in that we have the ability to travel freely. A lot of people don't realize this. There are large parts of this planet where individuals, human beings, do not have the right to travel. And it's not just because of money. They don't have the right to travel. It's either incredibly dangerous to travel or they're not permitted to travel. unless they get special permission from the government. We don't need that in the United States of America. You can hop in your car and you can travel and drive as far as you want to drive. And you can stay in a motel, a hotel, at a friend's house. You don't need permission to do that from anyone. And yet, what is the Biden administration doing? They're making it unaffordable to drive your car because of the price of gasoline. Then, of course, you say, fine, I'm going to buy an electric car. They're making it unaffordable to drive your electric car because of the price of electricity. They don't want you to travel. They want to control you. They want to have a carbon footprint tracker and a constantly changing system where they completely change the rules like every other month, like government always does, and say, well, we used to want you to have an electric car, but now that you have an electric car, you can only power that electric car if you buy the really, really expensive electricity made from solar and wind and backup battery power. We're not going to let you buy the other power that's made from natural gas or for oil or from nuclear because that's not cool. And therefore, your social credit score will go down because you're traveling too much. This is what your government thinks of you right now. And I know that's a broad term, but you know who these politicians are. These are the politicians that just want to be permanently in office and they're willing to sell you out for any cost. And do you ever hear them talk about the things that I'm talking about now? Ever? Do you ever hear? When was the last time you heard someone go to Davos, Switzerland that stood up while this idiot, J. Michael Evans of Alibaba Group, was talking and say, excuse me, I'm governor of Maryland, or I'm governor of Illinois, or I'm governor of Georgia, and I was invited here to come. I don't know how I got on the guest list, but I think what you're doing by trying to track someone's carbon footprint is immoral and wrong. And it is a surveillance society kind of technology, and I'm not going to put up with it, and you will never be able to do that in my state. Or you will never be able to allow that to happen in the United States of America. And the fact that you're celebrating this demonstrates to me that you don't understand the American system of government, let alone the fact that humans have a right to be free. No one ever stands up to that because naturally you're not going to get an invitation to Davos, Switzerland unless you're part of the club, like Larry Hogan. Case in point about Davos, Switzerland. We have another clip, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to believe this. Okay, this happened as well. So Pfizer, right? The company that's made, God knows how many hundreds of billions of dollars off of these vaccines that they keep giving you. It's a vaccine that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because you still get the disease. You still get the virus. By definition, if it were a vaccine, then by definition, you would not get the virus. But there is an argument to be made that if you do get vaccinated and you are much older and you have a comorbidity, that it prevents you from dying. Okay, great. And I have no doubt that there is truth to that, and I think that's a good thing. All right, but there's also the other side of the vaccine, which is the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, wants everybody to be vaccinated, no matter how young you are, so that they can make lots of money, even if the vaccine is doing you harm, which clearly there has been a lot of evidence from the various reporting systems, the VAERS reporting system, which of course is fundamentally dishonest, but it's all we have. We have to work with what we have, whereby the vaccines have harmed people, okay? And everybody's afraid of talking about this. In fact, our dumbest bill in America is going to be really about this issue because you won't believe what they're doing in California. But back to Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, who was at Davos, Switzerland. He was there, for the World Economic Forum. And he talks about a new technology, a new tracker technology that Pfizer is working on. You won't believe it. We have the clip, ladies and gentlemen, and here it is.
It is basically a biological chip that it is in the tablet. And once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet. So imagine the applications of that, compliance. The insurance companies to know that the medicines that patients should take, they do take them. It is fascinating what happens in this field.
Okay, let's break this down. Pfizer is really happy. This is Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, is really happy at the economic forum in Davos, Switzerland, because Pfizer has an ingestible pill that you swallow, and once it dissolves, there's a tiny chip that sends a wireless signal to the relevant authorities when the pharmaceutical has been digested. Imagine the compliance, he says. He said that. Imagine the compliance. Yeah. So let's get this straight. There was a period, and still existing, by the way, across the country in many places, where if you did not get vaccinated, you could not go out to eat somewhere, like in New York City. You know, signs across all the restaurants. You can't come in here unless you can show proof of vaccination. Not once, but twice, and who knows, boosted and throosted, who knows. And then you couldn't work unless you were vaccinated. And then you couldn't travel unless you were vaccinated. And now we have the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, and Davos, Switzerland saying, we have a pill and we've invented it, and it'll prove that you actually took the medicine that we told you that you had to take. And it proves that you took it because it sends us a signal. Only when it's been dissolved in your stomach does it send a signal that you actually took the medicine and you comply. Folks, do you realize how dangerous this is? Do you realize now why it is that true conservatives have opposed Obamacare and government takeovers of healthcare in principle, right? So as a conservative, I've always opposed Obamacare, and I've opposed government one-payer takeover of healthcare over the principle, the very common sense principle that once government takes over your healthcare, there's nothing they can't control. So we heard the previous idiot from Alibaba talk about how he's going to track what you eat and track what you travel, the so-called carbon tracker. And then we have the Pfizer CEO is going to track the medicine that you take to make sure that you comply with the government diktats, since you have a one-payer system with healthcare. And the government under the one-payer system says, you must take this new pill. Why do I have to take the new pill? Because we said so. And if you do not take this new pill, you can't travel. We're going to give you a really low social credit score. You can't have great food. You can't go to the supermarket and buy the food of your choice. You can't even go inside of a restaurant unless you take this medicine. You can't even work. Exactly like the peak COVID period, which, by the way, in some places still exists, where you have to have a vaccine in order to work. I have a very dear friend, I know everyone does, in the same situation, that was told, get the vaccine or else you will be fired. You will be separated. And that friend is like, well, fine, I'll just work from home. Why can't I continue to work for you since I'm in mostly the tech space doing technology? What's the difference between me sitting in the office doing it or sitting at home? And they're like, well, we'll let you do it for a little while, but if you don't comply, how are we supposed to ever meet you back in the office, for meetings and stuff like that? If you don't comply and get the vaccine, you will be separated from this job and you will be fired. And then, of course, fast forward, all of this stuff has come out about how the vaccine is not appropriate for everybody. And I think that that's really that should be underscored here. The vaccine is clearly not an appropriate medicine for everybody. It's not. Okay. And she believed, this friend of mine, that the vaccine was not appropriate for her. And she made her case. Then, just recently, and I mean really recently, the company that she works for reversed their policy, literally reversed the policy and said, guess what? You no longer have to be vaccinated. You have your job. Don't worry. Everything's good. You don't do it. So the question arises then, well, who do I sue? Right? Who do I sue who put me through this emotional anguish? And at what point do we push back as a society against not just these companies, but the one-payer healthcare system, healthcare system, and the Pfizer CEOs of the world that are telling us that they're inventing more and more ways to control our healthcare and to control our bodies and to control our lives. Once again, a one-payer system, which means a one-payer system is a system controlled by the federal government or your state government. It's a system controlled by government where you get health care. That's the good news, but the bad news is the payer is the government. And the government taxes you through the roof, and the government decides what kind of care is appropriate and what kind of care isn't. And if the government decides that vaccination is the care that you must have, then how do you not get it? And I think that is really the takeaway from this, one of the many takeaways, of course, from this Davos, Switzerland meeting, namely that we have people like CEO Albert Bourla of Pfizer and this Evans guy from Alibaba, the Chinese surveillance technology company, that are trying to find ways of controlling every aspect of your life. And they're trying to do it through the back door of healthcare, which is why you hear so many people, of course, in the United States complaining about the World Health Organization and the way we are ceding as a country our control, our local control and sovereign control of our healthcare to this organization of elites that thinks they can tell us what kind of healthcare and what kind of medicine that we should and should not be able to take. So this tracker tyranny, ladies and gentlemen, is real. It's very real. And if you ever wonder in the United States of America why the Constitution is so important, why it's more important today than it ever was, why the individual is more important today than it ever was, why the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are more important than they ever were, all you need to do is watch some of these seminars at Davos, Switzerland, and you will see the so-called high and mighty of the world, the billionaires and the bought and paid for politicians who go there because they want to be part of the cool club. And they are willing to basically sell you out all day long, anytime. So next up, podcast listeners, child gender transitions are child abuse. In Texas, reported by the Daily Wire, the Texas Supreme Court rules child gender transitions can be investigated as child abuse. This is huge, by the way. In February, Texas Governor Greg Abbott directed family protective agencies to begin investigating child gender transition treatments as child abuse. It's a landmark ruling. Last week, the Texas State Supreme Court ruled that those investigations may continue, but they won't be compulsory. So, in other words, the department can investigate these so-called transition treatments, but not necessarily will they be compulsory. As the Daily Wire reported on February 22nd, Abbott wrote a letter to the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, DFPS, stating, "The Office of the Attorney General, OAG, has now confirmed in the enclosed opinion that a number of so-called sex change procedures constitute child abuse under existing Texas law. Since the Department of Family and Protective Services is responsible for protecting children from abuse, the governor's letter was a directive for them to investigate any reported instances of these procedures in the state of Texas. Abbott pointed out that Texas law mandated reporting standards for professionals like doctors, teachers, nurses. So the directive made it mandatory for those professionals to report the parents of children who are, as he put it, quote, subjected to these abusive gender transitioning procedures, end quote. He also said the other state agencies have to investigate licensed facilities where such procedures are thought to have occurred. As you can imagine, this announcement was met with pushback from the LGBT activists, including the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU of Texas, and the Lambda Legal, who filed a lawsuit over Abbott's direction on behalf of the family of a 16-year-old who claimed to be transgender. So as you can imagine, these groups are trying to separate parents from their children so that the children can, of course, completely comply with the crazy LGBTQ plus MOUSC rules, whatever they may be, as of late, and they change they change from day to day, let's face it. A district judge then blocked an investigation by the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services into the parents of that 16-year-old, as well as any similar investigations throughout the state. That ruling was later upheld by a Texas appeals court last week. The Texas Supreme Court struck down that ruling and reaffirmed that DFPS could resume the investigations. This is big, okay? I wanted to read this to you because it's a really important article about a very important development that anybody with reasonably good common sense would agree with, which is anytime you try to provide a child medication, okay, they're not even an adult, a child, medication and or surgery so that they can change genders, that's child abuse, right? Those same individuals have their entire adult lives to do those things if they so choose to do so, okay? Once a child becomes an adult, they have the whole life, their whole life, and all their lives ahead of them to be able to choose, if they want, to have surgery and to take medications to, in my opinion, change their bodies in ways that I think is wrong, but that is their right as an adult. But as a child to have the educational institutions involved in this and all of these, LGBTQ plus and other organizations and ACLU, it's really weird. I don't know. It's really, really strange. To me, it is. And it's kind of interesting that these are the same people that are constantly talking about how they want their bodies to be theirs and they should be able to choose, my body, my choice. Pelosi says private companies should provide travel for abortions as a health benefit. Now, you might wonder why Pelosi would say this, okay? Now, obviously, she's crazy, but the reason she's saying this is because once the Supreme Court rules on Roe v. Wade and pushes this decision-making authority back to the states, as it should, there will be some states with very restrictive abortion laws, and some states, like my home state, that wrongly, I believe, of course, wrongly has abortion on demand all the way through pregnancy. My state does. I think it's awful. I think it's immoral. I think it's illegal. I think it's murder. That's what I believe. But because you will have 50 states doing their own thing as it relates to abortion, Pelosi's point is, well, we should have a national law that requires private companies to allow you to travel and then to pay for your travel so that you can go abortion shopping. Essentially, that's what this bill would be. It would be an abortion shopping bill. Well, I can't get an abortion in my 8th month in the state of Texas, so I want someone to pay for my travel and for my abortion by going somewhere in the Northeast where they allow it in the 8th month. Literally, that's what she's advocating for. And to prove it, of course, we have good old CNN's Dana Bash asking Nancy Pelosi about this new benefit. I just wanted to give you that background of why she's offering this benefit and why she wants to pass a bill to require this benefit of the private companies. It was really that simple, and it really is that simple. I'll explain it again, but first up, here is the clip with Pelosi talking about it. Here it is.
Would you encourage private companies to provide travel for abortions as a health benefit?
Well, of course that, but the fact is we as a country, let's just put this in perspective.
Of course I do, because let's just put this in perspective. We cut off the rest of that because it didn't make any sense, as usually most of her comments don't, but that's what CNN wants. CNN wants private companies, and so does Nancy Pelosi, to pay for you to travel to go abortion shopping so that depending on which month you're in, that's the state that you can go in. And as I said, my own home state of Maryland has clinics in it that will perform abortions all the way up to pregnancy, literally, all the way up to, giving birth. So in other words, all the way up to the 9th month. It's disgusting. It clearly is almost hard to believe that it happens in the United States in a civilized society. But this is how crazy the Democrats are. They're trying to separate you and everyone else from your responsibility. And it's always someone else's fault, right? It's like the Democrat way. My body, my choice, but not when it comes to, of course, the other matters in Davos, Switzerland. And of course, Nancy Pelosi, we just want to talk about this briefly too. Her husband was just in a car crash and he was arrested for DUI, which I think is kind of interesting. And obviously I don't want, anyone to be hurt in this car crash, but nonetheless, this was just reported that Nancy Pelosi's husband crashed his new Porsche, of course, just 5 miles from their multi-million-dollar California vineyard. Don't you love this? Nancy Pelosi's got a vineyard. Her husband's got a Porsche. When he was busted for allegedly driving drunk, police documents revealed just yesterday, Paul Pelosi, who is 82 years old, was in a 2021 Porsche when he tried to get across State Route 29 in Napa Valley from a country lane close to other vineyards just before 10:30 p.m. Saturday, his arrest report said. As he attempted to cross the main road, his Porsche was struck by a 2014 Jeep driven by a 48-year-old local man, the document said. The other driver was not arrested because, of course, Paul was drinking and driving, as you might expect, or certainly driving under the influence. And thankfully, no one was hurt, but I'm sure good old Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi will figure out a way of getting off. I'm sure. So next up, podcast listeners, your 21st century left. I actually really like this title for this segment. Your 21st century left. So what is the left like in the 21st century? Well, they just yell out, even at parades. So they're so triggered. Obviously you've seen them, the left in front of Supreme Court justices' homes protesting, which of course you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to influence a court or try to intimidate judges. That actually is a crime, and it should be a crime. You should not be allowed to intimidate judges. I think that's a good law. But the 21st century left, this is what they do. They don't believe in laws. They don't believe in the Constitution. No. They just believe in being as rude, as ignorant, as crass, and as ugly as they possibly can. Case in point, in New York City, good old Rudy Giuliani came back and he decided to walk in the Israeli Day Parade in New York City. It's a big parade. It's an important parade. And in the New York Post, Rudy Giuliani erupted and yelled at a heckler during the parade celebrating Israel, calling the man a jackass and a brainwashed a-hole while defending his record as the city's mayor. Now, keep in mind, Rudy Giuliani is the last mayor of New York City who oversaw the city when it was safe, when it was clean, when it was thriving, and also when it was attacked on 9/11. I mean, this man is a hero, okay? He's a hero in every way. What city in America wouldn't want Rudy Giuliani as their mayor? Okay? I think of the city where I was born and raised, Baltimore City. Baltimore City is a third world country war zone. Literally, that would be giving it a compliment. That's how bad it is. I would love to have Rudy Giuliani as mayor of Baltimore City. I mean, he would clean up the city. He would bring businesses back to the city. He would put people behind bars, the criminals behind bars. He would be rewarding the police officers for doing their jobs, not disparaging them. He would get rid of the crime at the very highest levels of government. That's what he did for New York City. So he comes back to New York City, Rudy Giuliani, and he decides to walk in the Israel Day Parade Israel Day Parade. I guess that's what it's called. And as you can imagine, the 21st century left decides of this great man who oversaw America's greatest city when it was not just in crisis, but the country was in crisis. And he was the calm. He was the guy that made us confident that we could rebuild. It wasn't George Bush. It was Giuliani. So he's in this parade and he's just minding his own business and back in his old home city, supporting the people. And this person on the sidelines watching the parade just like randomly yells out loud and tries to get into an argument with them. What they didn't understand is this is Rudy Giuliani, right? He's coming right back at you, right in your face, which I love. I love this because increasingly, I was always taught, first of all, when someone yells at you like that, you should just ignore them, or you should at least try to talk to them in a civil way. Increasingly, this is becoming very difficult in America, where all you're doing is you're in a parade and it's a time of celebration, and you got an idiot who's yelling at you, and you've got a resume that most people will never reach, like Rudy Giuliani, and this idiot's yelling at you. So what do? Well, Rudy was going to have none of it, and he went right back at them. We had that clip. Here it is.
It's up 40% under him. You did it. You're right. You're right. I refuse crime, you jackass. You're the best. Why am I the best? You are a brainwashed asshole. And you're probably I am a class act. And you're probably as demented as Biden.
Great. You are a brainwashed a-hole, and you're probably as demented as Biden because the person's just yelling at him randomly from the sideline. It's incredible. The inability to have civil discourse from the left. That's the 21st century left. It is. It's who they are. They're so triggered by a simple R behind your name, right? The simple consonant, an R. Because you're a Republican, they can't help themselves. They're mentally ill. They really are. And it's a celebration, the Israel Day celebration parade. He's just walking down there supporting and providing solidarity and showing solidarity for Israel. And this idiot is yelling at him. And the idiot doesn't think that Rudy's just going to come after him. I love this. I think this is great. I mean, we need more of this. When we have a 21st century left who thinks this is the way you should comport yourself in public, I must say it is time to really take back our country and to challenge them and to expose them for what they are. Lunatics. Absolute lunatics. So next up, podcast listeners, we have the Daily Biden Dumpster Fire. Joe Biden says he applied to the Naval Academy, but the dates don't add up. So I tried to find a clip on this. I couldn't. And I think the reason is because he was speaking, Joe Biden was, the president, was speaking at the United States Naval Academy graduation, okay, which just occurred. And so you have all these midshipmen graduating from the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Biden was there as the keynote speaker. Okay, it was the Naval Academy's turn to have Joe Biden. Sorry about that. And he's there. And he's speaking, and Biden said to this audience of thousands, he said that he had applied to Annapolis, to the Naval Academy, with a letter from then Delaware Senator J. Caleb Boggs. But in that year, he cited in 1965 is the same year that Biden graduated from the University of Delaware. So you apply to the United States Naval Academy, ladies and gentlemen, when you're a junior in high school, okay? You apply between your junior year and your senior year, or when you first start your senior year. And it's a long process. It's a lengthy process to get into the United States Naval Academy. It's very, very selective. You do not apply to get into the United States Naval Academy the year that you graduate from college, okay? Because the Naval Academy is a 4-year college. but it's a 4-year military college. Biden went to Delaware, University of Delaware, and the year he cited was 1965, which was the year that he had actually graduated. Quote, I was told the class of 72 is here. He said this, Biden, to the audience of thousands at the United States Naval Academy. I was told the class of 1972 is here. I was appointed to the Academy in 1965 by a senator who I was running against in 1972. Never planned it that way. I wasn't old enough to be sworn in. I was only 29 years old when I was running, Biden said. He was a fine man. His name was Jay Calaboggs, the president went on. I didn't come to the Academy because I wanted to be a football star, Biden said. And you had a guy named Staubach and Bellino here, so I went to Delaware instead so I could play football instead of the Naval Academy. You know, if any other person in the United States of America who's an elected official, anyone else, especially someone with an R at the end of their name, had said such a stupid thing, honestly, I mean, they would be just shellacked in the media. Yet, you have to dig really, really deep to find this story. I mean, very, very deep. And when you finally do find the story, you know, you read it and it's hard to find the clips of when he actually said it, but they do exist, just so you know, because the entire speech was recorded at the United States Naval Academy when he spoke. So Biden's like, yeah, well, I didn't want to play at the Naval Academy. I got in, but I didn't want to play because football. Because, you know, you had all these really greats there, and I wanted to actually be a starter on the University of Delaware's football team. The man is a liar. He's such a liar. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, he's been doing this his entire career. Everybody knows this. His entire career, he embellishes his resume to a degree that for some reason, everybody's just accepted it. I do not understand this. I mean, I've known people that have embellished their resume before at very low levels of government or in the private sector. They're always called out. Always. They're always found out and they're always called out. Why this guy gets a pass, I have no idea. Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is the California Medical Misinformation Bill. That's right, the Medical Misinformation Bill in California is the dumbest bill in America. So in the epic times, ladies and gentlemen, get this. California is poised to adopt the Medical Misinformation Bill targeting alternative COVID-19 protocols. In other words, if you're a doctor in California and a patient comes to you and you offer the patient an alternative to the vaccine or an alternative treatment because you have COVID, then you could have your medical license revoked. What? So the California legislature is poised to pass Assembly Bill 2098, described as a medical misinformation bill. If passed, the new law would prohibit doctors from freely providing medical advice and treating their patients if those practices run counter to the official state-sanctioned position. In April 2020, the state of California Department of Consumer Affairs, the California State Board of Pharmacy, and the Medical Board of California issued a statement regarding the improper prescribing of medications related to treatment of novel coronavirus, such as hydroxychloroquine, warning that inappropriately prescribing or dispensing medications constitutes unprofessional conduct in California. Because, you know, it's not between you and your doctor anymore. When you have a one-payer system in the United States of America or a one-payer system in California, they get to decide, and only they get to decide, what your medicine can be and what your treatment can be. You no longer have any kind of true relationship or privacy with your physician. It doesn't exist. The state's right there in between you. You don't have informed consent with you and your physician. No, the state is in charge of your health care because you have a one-payer system. In June 29th of 2021, the Federation of State Medical Boards issued a warning stating that physicians who generate and spread COVID-19 vaccine misinformation or disinformation are risking disciplinary action by state medical boards, including the suspension or revocation of their medical license. And so this has continued. They've given some examples of doctors who have prescribed ivermectin and prescribed hydroxychloroquine. And those doctors, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, are now they could have their license revoked. They're in trouble of having their license revoked because they are trying different forms of treatment for their patients based on, by the way, the patient's concerns over the vaccine or the patient's concerns over the prevailing treatments once you do get sick if you go to the hospital. And look, there are plenty of people that we've spoken to, and I know you have too, that have said, you really kind of sort of want to look at different ways of treating different things based on your own unique health. And that's between you and your doctor. Not anymore. This bill passes, ladies and gentlemen. It's between you and the state, not between you and the doctor. So AB 2098, entitled Physicians and Surgeons Unprofessional Conduct, says that existing law provides for the licensure and regulation of physicians and surgeons by the Medical Board of California. And the bill would designate the dissemination or promotion of misinformation or disinformation related to SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus or COVID-19 as unprofessional conduct. The bill would require the board to consider specified factors prior to bringing a disciplinary action against a physician and surgeon. The bill would also make findings and declarations in this regard. And so the entire purpose of the bill, ladies and gentlemen, in California, the medical misinformation bill in California is to make sure that every single doctor in the state tells only one story about how to treat something, and that is a story that has been bought and paid for by Pfizer and all of the other pharmaceutical companies. Meanwhile, of course, Gavin Newsom and all of his, elites, are they really following the same advice? I mean, I don't know. We're told they are. And, they're staging these things where Gavin is getting his vaccination and you see the picture. I don't know. I mean, I just don't trust government anymore. And what are they trying to do in California? They're trying to literally control your health care and control the conversation that your doctor has with you. Your doctor can't have a conversation with you about what's best for you. That's the very definition of tyranny and the takeover of medicine and control of your life. Everybody knows it. And yet California, they're all in. You wonder why people can't wait to leave California? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And that is the California Medical Misinformation Bill. And that's the dumbest bill in America. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.